Good evening. Welcome to the Fright Files. My name is Chris Harmon, but you can call me Dr. Fright. Tonight, you will hear stories, cases of real UFO encounters, recent encounters that will leave you spellbound. You will also see firsthand photographic evidence taken by the witnesses. You will hear strange and unknown paranormal encounters, as well as hearing firsthand testimony of Bigfoot encounters. Chris Harmon, known as Dr. Fright, and Madam Mina is also here to tell you some fascinating stories. Before we begin, you must ask yourself that one all-important question. Can you withstand all the way till the end? And listen to these cases very carefully, because any of these cases could be in your hometown. Let's get started, shall we? This first encounter has photographic evidence taken by the witness, as you see there on your screen. Occurred February 28th, 2026 at 4:02 Central Time. Lasted 3 seconds. Number of observers 1. Location Huntsville, Alabama, United States. Shape cylinder object. Color was said to be silver or white. Estimated size unable to determine. Viewed from land. Direction from viewer. A little north of my location, said the witness, and close to overhead. The sun was at my back. Angle of elevation 80. Closest distance 30,000 feet. Estimated speed unable to determine. Characteristics aircraft nearby. When the witness saw this object, an aircraft was nearby. So he knew this object looked nothing like an aircraft. Now let's hear what the witness stated in his report. Tic-tac object. Near aircraft passing overhead. As the witness states, I am an advanced amateur photographer and was outside experimenting with my Nikon Z9 and attached a 300 millimeter zoom lens and 2 times teleconverter. This provides a 600 millimeter focal length, approximately 12 times compared to the naked eye. I observed an aircraft passing overhead and used it as a target of opportunity. I took 21 images, both camera, RAW and JPEG, in rapid succession. Upon review of those images this evening, I noticed an anomalous object in 6 of the frames. Now the sky was perfect blue and clear, and the sun was to my back, which made for excellent lighting conditions on the aircraft and on the object. In the 6 frames, what appears to be a small tic-tac shaped object is visible against the sky. In one image, it appears close to the left wing tip of the aircraft. I did not notice the object while shooting. Also, since the aircraft was so far away, the lens was focused at infinity, which means that the object objects near the camera would not be in focus, or they would be invisible in the image. This is not the case with the Tic Tac object, as it is in perfect focus as the aircraft, which says to me that it was at a high altitude similar to the aircraft. The witness says the object is white or silver and has similar spectacular properties to the aircraft. Two of the images give the impression the object was rotating, since it is not cylindrical in these images. In one of the two, the object looks V shaped or delta shaped. It is not a bug in my experience and opinion. My images show the aircraft to have a tail point, matching American Airlines. It flew over my location at 4:02 p.m. Using the history feature of the Flight Radar 24 app, I was able to identify the aircraft as Flight 8A3385, California to Denmark. The aircraft was Embraer E175LR, registered number N289MW, altitude 28,000 feet, ground speed 402 knots, direction of flight was westerly. Witness states, since my images were shot handheld, I cannot say if the object was moving or stationary, since the only reference in the images is the aircraft, which was moving itself. And folks, what you're about to see is another image zoomed in, and you can see the Tic Tac much clearer. There's the airplane, and then in the square here is where the Tic Tac was. This is February 28th, 2026 at 4:02 p.m. These images were taken by the witness himself. And now, if Madam Mina is ready, I would love to bring her on, and she can tell you her first story of the evening.
Yes, hello, Dr. Fright. I hope you're having a very, very spooky, frightful evening. This
Oh,
first. Oh, sorry, continue.
yes, your camera is off, Madam Mina. That is fine if it is off.
Yes, it is to keep the allure of mystery.
I like it. I like it.
So our first paranormal story comes from the subreddit r/paranormal encounters. The title is I woke up at 3 a.m. to two entities in my room. It changed how I view reality. It happened a long time ago, around 3 a.m. I woke up with that suffocating feeling I wasn't alone. When I opened my eyes, two silhouettes were standing right over me. One was wearing a pitch black robe, no face, nothing. The other was the one that still haunts me. It looked like the static of an old broken television, that grainy, shimmering, glitched visual effect. I was completely paralyzed. I started reciting prayers from my faith, and the moment I managed to flick the light switch on, they were gone. I was left there, trembling in the dark. In my culture, Turkey/Middle East, we call these entities jinn. Ever since that night, I've been obsessed with understanding what they are. I've spent years researching these encounters, looking for patterns. It seems like these disturbances happen most often during those thin hours of the night, when the boundaries between dimensions feels porous. I'm just curious, has anyone else experienced something similar during those deep hours of the night? Has anyone else felt that specific heavy presence that feels like it shouldn't be here, or seen things that just don't fit into our reality like they should? I am genuinely interested in hearing your experiences.
Ah, yes, Madam Mina. What a frightful tale that was. We will look forward to your next tale momentarily, but now we must move on to our next UFO encounter. This next encounter happened on February 27th, 2026. And remember, for those of you who are listening and watching, any one of these encounters you hear tonight could be in your own backyard, your own neck of the woods. So listen very carefully if you can withstand till the end of our show. You may become a believer in what you're hearing tonight because these encounters have first-hand photographic evidence and stories from the witnesses themselves. For instance, this next encounter came from February 27th, 2026 at 2:47 Pacific time. Duration between 8 to 10 seconds. Number of observers 2. Location Farmdale, Ohio, USA. Location details northernmost part of Trumbull County, approximately 2 miles from Ashtabula County. The shape of the object was a cigar. The color was white. Estimated size 100 to 120 feet. Viewed from land. Direction from viewer north. Angle of elevation 32. Closest distance 2 to 2.5 miles per hour. Or 2 to 2.5 miles, excuse me. Estimated speed 300 to 350 miles per hour. Characteristics there was an aircraft nearby. As the witness states in his report, and I quote, "We witnessed on a partly cloudy day an object traveling at low altitude in the north, traveling east while white or silver cigar shaped. It was a partly cloudy in my area of northern Trumbull County. My wife and I were enjoying some relaxation in the hot tub on our new rear patio. I was always watching the skies. We have a lot of air traffic, being not that far from two major airports, Cleveland and Pittsburgh Airport. So we saw many high altitude planes, which with contrails, easily visible wings and lights. We were facing north when I pointed out an unknown object traveling from west to east at approximately 3,500 feet in altitude. The object was white and cigar shaped, or could have been two tic tac shaped UAP together, which appeared to shimmer in the center. It appeared to be between 100 to 120 feet in length and traveled 300 miles per hour or so. No wings were visible, no exhaust trails. We could hear the jets at a higher altitude, but nothing from the object we were tracking. We witnessed this for 8 to 10 seconds before it disappeared into the cloud coverage. Folks, as you heard in that story, the UAP made no sound. Most UAP reports that we receive in MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, tend to have no sound. Most reports we get of UAPs or UFOs per se never have any sound associated with them. They, or even not even contrails. In my opinion, what the witness encountered was indeed a UFO, unidentified flying object. And now let's see what Madam Mina has in store for us next.
All right. This one is short but sweet. This one was submitted to r/paranormal, and the title is Creepy Leaf People Having a Tea Party. uh, it has a NSFW warning, so be prepared. I don't know. I don't know what's in the story. It goes, "This is not my story, but a friend's story. He used to share it numerous times and always had me thinking possibly these events are 20 years ago at this point. So basically, when my friend was 11, he was sleeping like any night when suddenly he woke up for no apparent reason. The bed leaned against the wall, and on the wall there was a window adjacent to the bed. Anyway, he noticed it was 2 a.m., so out of habit, he decided to peek out the window. When he took a look, a chilling scene unfolded before his eyes. Over on the neighbor house property, where there was a tree overlooking his window, there was it there was where it seems to be, okay, sorry, they kind of didn't type this properly. It seemed to be some sort of humanoid entities who their bodies were covered in leaves and bark, sitting around a table having a tea and dinner. My friend just froze for a couple of seconds, then tried to slowly cover the window before the creatures noticed him. Once he covered the window, he ran to his parents' room and stayed there for the night. What do you think these creepy entities were covered in leaves? I'm very curious to know. What do you think, Dr. Fright?
I am not sure, Madam Mina. It is the first time I've heard of beings covered in leaves. Makes me wonder if they were trying to hide their identity so that
Mm,
so the witness or the public wouldn't get scared of their true identity.
true. They might have been even creepier underneath the leaves.
We will have to keep our eyes and ears peeled for more stories in relation to that and see if we can make sense of this. And if you, the audience in the chat room, hear of any stories of that nature, please send them to our contact email address. We would love to hear more stories of the beings covered in leaves. Which brings us to our next interesting story, which has a first-hand witness encounter. February 24th, 2026, 1806 Pacific Time. The drawing you are witnessing, the drawing is what the witness encountered on that day. Duration 3 minutes long. Number of observers 1. Location Fort Smith, Arkansas, USA. Location details above local clouds over city. Appeared northeast of my position. Continued straight east. The shape was chevron. Dark matted gray. Rusty looking. Size 300 feet. Viewed from land. Direction from viewer northeast traveling northwest. Angle of elevation 50 degrees or 50. closest distance 10,045 feet away to 800 feet elevation. Estimated speed, the AI estimated the speed at 1,385 miles per hour. Let me repeat that, 1,385 miles per hour. But the witness says it seemed a little bit slower than that. And in the witness's report, and I quote, slightly covered large craft moving slowly over Fort Smith, Arizona, traveling east to west. No sound, no lights, no visible windows. On February 24th, 2026 at 9:50 p.m., I witnessed a large object gliding slightly through the skies over Fort Smith, Arkansas. There were a couple of wispy cloud lines, otherwise it was a clear moonlit night. I was looking directly overhead as I do often when taking my dog out for a potty break. I caught movement in my peripheral vision to my northeast. At first, I took it to be a flock of geese flying in formation, and I spent several seconds trying to discern if they were changing leaders, as it was not in a sharp V shape. After a few moments, I was able to tell there was no movement, as there would be with geese. It was a single huge object that I was looking at. The object continued in a more or less straight east to west line. It was moving at a rather slow pace. It seemed at the time, or at least, and was visible against the night sky for about 3 minutes approximate. As the witness states, I realized it was not a flock of geese. I started to take a mental note of the details. I extended my arm completely, and it was just a bit over the stretch between the tip of my thumb and the index finger. It appeared to be just above the wispy clouds, so I estimated it to be 800 to 1,000 feet from the ground. I had no other points of reference to make. I did run some numbers based on my viewing angle and aforementioned sight measurement. It made no sound and kept on even altitude the entire time. It made no sound and kept an even altitude the entire time I observed it. As I stated earlier, it was not a sharp V, but rather more of a bent rectangle, sort of how a slightly bent boomerang might be shaped. There was a slight top to it, wider in the center and narrower at the ends, though only slightly, says the witness. And on both ends it appeared to have smallish bullet-shaped tips extending towards the rear. It appeared to have minimum, height and thickness compared to the width and length. Again, I liken it to a boomerang in height versus length and width. It was dark colored, like a weathered blackish gray, and I caught random reflections off different sections as it made its way across the city. These reflections were small, almost points of light, and dull as if off a metal submetallic surface. There were no defining lines or seams on it, so my use of selections are referenced to different places across its length. There were no discernible windows or openings, which I can make out more details. It appeared to be a single solid piece. All right. That was a very interesting encounter. And that picture you're seeing is what the witness states he's seen. This is the closest reference we could give that shows what the witness was seeing. And folks, I want to say thank you to everybody in the chat room for joining us here at the Fright Files. And I want to say thank you to everybody watching around the globe. Pay very close attention because any one of these encounters, Bigfoot, UFO, paranormal, could be from your own neighborhood or even your own backyard. Some witnesses are afraid to report what they saw. They're afraid of ridicule, being laughed at, or being looked at as crazy or funny. Some witnesses have physical hands-on encounters and they're afraid to talk about it. Very afraid. They don't know what to make of it. Some people have missing time and that scares the heck out of them. They don't know what happened. 1 minute it's 9 o'clock in the evening, next thing they know it's 2 o'clock. I've been there. But as we roll along with these fascinating stories of fright, we send it back to Madamina to see if she's got another enchanting, scary tale for us.
Absolutely. So this next story comes from the r/paranormal encounter subreddit. The title goes, "My 16th century ancestor is haunting me, and I have the receipts to prove it's not just a dream." Hey Reddit, I'm posting this here because I honestly don't know who else to talk to without sounding like a total lunatic. I'm currently spiraling a bit, and I need to get this off my chest. To give you some context, my family is part of the old Sicilian nobility. We're talking ancestors who served kings and popes. Kind of old. Lately, I've been deep diving into my family history, specifically focusing on one ancestor from the 1500s. This guy was the definition of a Renaissance villain. He had ties to the most powerful and ruthless families of the 16th century. The Borgias, Pope Alexander the Sixth, Caesar, Machiavelli, Leo the 10th, Leo the 5th. Leo the 10th, Charles the 5th, Hernan Cortez, and Ferdinand the Catholic. He wasn't exactly a good guy. The records show that he was incredibly violent. Inquisition stakes, executions. He allegedly drowned children in water barrels. Brutal family vendettas and forcing women into cloisters. He held the title of Baron back then, which later became a princely title for his successors in the 1600s. We know almost everything about his life except for one thing: his death. The chronicles just stop. He died at 65, but no one knows how. All we know is that he was buried in a magnificent black marble sarcophagus beneath a basilica in Sicily. Fast forward to World War II, the Americans bombed the island. The basilica was leveled and his tomb lost under the rubble, gone. Now here's where it gets weird. I currently live in a family villa located right on the land that used to be his fief. About 3 weeks ago, I was sleeping with my bedroom door locked. I woke up in the middle of the night in what I assumed was a sleep paralysis. I couldn't move, but I could see everything clearly. I watched my locked door swing open. A figure walked in. He was tall, maybe 5'7", 1.70 meters, dressed in a full 16th century noble attire with a sword at his belt. His leather gloves were soaked in blood. His face was deathly pale, like a literal corpse. His eyes had no pupils, just empty white sockets. He gripped the bedpost, stood up on the end of my bed, and just stared down at me. I was paralyzed with fear. Then he started speaking in an old Sicilian dialect. I'll translate it here. You know everything about me. I am your lineage. I am still here under the rubble. Oh, you, blood of my blood, who listens to my stories, I beg you, find me. I am waiting for you. I closed my eyes and I opened them again. He was gone. I could move again. I I've barely slept since, but this has happened every single night for 22 days straight. Two things have absolutely broken my skepticism. The portrait. I have never seen a painting of him because they are rare. A museum recently sent me a scan of an uncatalogued portrait of this baron, and guys, it was him. It was the exact man from my room. There is no way I could have known what he looked like. The date? I just found out he died on March 2nd. My birthday is March 2nd. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is this just some weird psychological obsession because of my research? Or is he actually demanding I dig him up? How do I close this circle? Has anyone ever dealt with ancestral hauntings like this? What am I supposed to do? That was very, very creepy.
Yes, that was extremely frightful and creepy, Madam Mina. Thank you for picking such fantastic stories to tell on the Fright Files. We enjoy having you here to lift our frightful minds. And now I think it's time for our most recent Bigfoot sighting. This sighting is particularly picked because of its extreme frightfulness, and you can almost hear the howls and the screams coming from the story. This story, however, has no photographic evidence, but it is so frightful we have to tell it. It was in the summer, month of September, September 9th, 2025. Location details: State, California. Country, San Bernardino. Location details: 34 at 26 622 North, 117.62683 West. Nearest town, Mount Baldley. Nearest road, Mount Baldley Road Highway. Observed on September 9th, 2025. As the witness states, and I quote, I drove up to Minker Flats to hike the Mount Baldley Bowl to Devil's Backbone Trail. It was approximately 8 a.m., and the weather was approximately 55 to 60 degrees at the trailhead on Mount Baldley Road. I exited my Jeep and walked to the back of it to prepare my gear for the long hike. As I was opening the tailgate on my Jeep, I heard an extremely loud wail coming from what seemed like the end of Mount Baldley Road, which is approximately 1 1/4 of a mile north of where I was. The screams produced a strong emotional response from me, and the sound went on for approximately 10 to 15 seconds. As the witness states, I captured a video that has part of the screams and dogs from the second or third neighboring house nearby. The scream made me freeze and made the hair on my back stand up and my neck stand up as well. I needed some time to think about what I had heard before I started my trek again. I have been a police officer in Los Angeles for approximately 9 years and work on the other side of the freeway from downtown Los Angeles. I have never experienced the rush of emotions the wail, scream cause. There was approximately 15 other vehicles parked where I was. It is a moderately trafficked area, even during the weekdays. I am not sure what made the screams or wail. I am an avid hiker and a camper when life permits, and have never heard this type of noise or had a reaction to a noise like I did with this one. I did find a possible footprint on a nearby peak approximately 2 years ago, but decided it was nothing. The footprint was around 5,500 feet of elevation on Sunset Peak. I was reluctant to share this, but was convinced by my girlfriend because the sound made her uncomfortable, even though even through a phone speaker. The witness says, "Thank you all for your time and thank you for what you do, for all you do. Hope to hear from you all soon." I want to say thank you to the witness for supplying this story to the website. There were other witnesses. I was the only witness. Says, was there other witnesses? No. Witness states he was the only witness. The witness was asked, was there other stories? None. I have seen a possible footprint 2 years prior. Time and conditions. Morning time, 7:45 a.m. Environment, mountain road, approximately 5,000 feet elevation. What a frightful story that was, and to think of how the screams and wails must have sounded to the witness. I wish we could hear the audio recording he captured of that. That would have been amazing to hear. Maybe we can get that audio for one of our Fright File episodes. But for right now, let's move on to our next case before we see Madamina with another wild story. This next case is a UFO encounter. I want you to pay very close attention to what you're about to hear, because this could happen to you in your own neck of the woods, and this just may be in your hometown. It occurred on February 22nd at 6:11 p.m. Pacific time. Lasted about 5 seconds. Number of observers: 2 pilot military aviation experts. Albuquerque, New Mexico, USA. Shape of the object: orb. Red orange. Estimated size: unknown. Dots in cloud were pinhead size. Viewed from land. Direction from viewer: east southeast. Angle of elevation: 78. Unknown mountains are 4.5 miles from me. Estimated speed: moving. Varying. Match satellite speed seen from ground. Characteristics: lights on object made a sound. Aircraft nearby. Bright red orange orbs flying in a fanned out formation, rapidly moving and changing direction. And as the witness states, I was talking with my neighbor while looking east into the night sky above the mountains when I noticed what I originally assumed were space debris, about 100 or more bright red orange orbs traveling linearly south to north in a fan shaped cloud, moving incredibly fast. I pointed out, and my neighbor excitedly confirms he sees it as well. Immediately after I pointed out, the entire cloud suddenly turns 90 degrees and begins heading to the east while accelerating to even faster speeds. The bright red orange color remained consistent, but the fan shaped cloud morphed and folded into one itself. Variances in altitude among the clusters of dots. As the cloud continues east, the dots progressively assume the fan shaped cloud organ again. As I was wondering if I just saw a drone swarm, the cloud moved over, the mountains continuing east. As the witness says, as I was wondering if I just saw a drone swarm over the clouds. If I just saw a drone swarm the cloud, moved over the mountains, continuing east, and the altitude becoming apparent for the first time as the cloud disappeared behind the mountains at the moment. Witness states, I knew it wasn't a drone swarm from an entertainment event. One strange note is the sound. There was this bizarre whistling sound similar to Hollywood wind sound effects. I couldn't pin the source down, but it come from the east. And the witness background. Witness states, I am a Marine Corps veteran who worked in aviation at Camp Pendleton and Yuma on occasions. I am also a professional UAS pilot and FPV racing drone pilot, and I am intimately familiar with UAS, both slow and fast moving, and military aviation operations. I'm not sure what my neighbor's background is since he just moved here. What a fascinating tale. And this particular story, the witness states he heard what sounded like a whistling sound coming from the object. In most cases, we do not get sounds from objects. Usually, the UFO or the UAP, as we call them, has no sound. Very seldom do we get reports with sound. In some cases, if it is sound, then it's probably a man made object. But this witness is a veteran, and we take most veteran cases very serious. So you, the audience watching this show, you be the judge. Do you think it was man-made object or an unknown aerial vehicle or object in the sky, as we call UFO or UAP? And now we will send it back to Madam Mina. Do you have another fascinating case for us?
Yes, I do. I have one more story, and this one is submitted by r/ghost stories, and the title is Airbnb So Haunted We Had to Leave Early. This is all a true story, and out of my entire life of experiencing the paranormal, this story takes the cake. Also, this is a little part 2 from a post I made at a time this was actively happening, so about 4 years ago. A little background because it's pretty necessary for my story. This sounds corny, but I've always had a weird sense when it comes to the paranormal. Not like I can talk to ghosts or summon demons, but I do get this super weird feeling in my gut when something like this happens. Also, my mom is a skeptic and has never fully believed in ghosts. Anyway, mid 2022, me, my mom, my aunt, and my cousin planned a trip down to Florida for about 5 days. We got a pretty small Airbnb for us to stay in, and we're pretty excited for Disney World. The house was like this: walk in, and straight ahead of you is a kitchen. To your right, a small dining room, and a small hallway to the bathroom, my room, and my mom's room to the left. Oh, sorry. To the left was the living room, and my cousin's and aunt's room. My cousin and aunt had a volleyball tournament to go to on the fourth day, so they wouldn't be in the Airbnb for the fifth day. The first day, nothing crazy happened. No odd feelings, nothing. It was on the second day the first odd occurrence happened. At about 11 p.m., I thought I was the last one in the house awake, as everyone else was tired from the long day we had. Just as I was getting to sleep, I started to hear someone pressing buttons of the microwave. I figured my cousin was warming up her leftovers from dinner, so I shook it off. However, the microwave wasn't turning on, only the buttons were being pressed. I thought I was just imagining things and went to bed. The morning of the third day came, and as we were driving to one of the Disney parks, I asked who was screwing with the microwave the night before. It turns out nobody was out of their rooms the entire night. However, my cousin heard the same thing and was annoyed as the constant beeping woke her up. We pointed out the creepiness and went on with our day. So, after the day was over, we got home. It got late, and I was the last one awake. By about 10 p.m., I started to hear faint knocking on the wall behind my bed. I figured it was the neighbors, so I ended up not thinking much of it. That was until I turned the light off to go to sleep. As I was laying there, I saw a white orb come out slowly floating from the corner of the doorway and make its way to the middle of the room, just to dart back where it came from. I nearly peed my pants and decided it was sleep with the lights on time. After I turned on the lights, the knocking started back up, but this time it was clearly coming from the wall connected to the bathroom, which debunked my neighbor theory. The knocking continued from the wall behind me and the bathroom wall. I was also hearing the microwave buttons being pressed again. Once it started to slightly calm down, I was finally able to go to bed. It was about 2 a.m. at this point, so this went on constantly for 4 hours. The next day was the fourth day of our trip. I decided to tell everyone what happened. Uh, I, I decided to tell everyone what happened and what I saw, but was brushed off by everyone, including my mom. So I decided to just stay quiet about it for the rest of the day. By the time night came around, my cousin and aunt had left the Airbnb. Did my mom start to believe me? As it was getting later in the night, probably around 8 p.m., I heard the faint sound of knocking coming from behind my bed, and I decided to go sit in my mom's room with her, but the knocking continued from the bathroom, loud enough for me and my mom to hear. Eventually, the knocking seemed to be coming from every room in the house, yet very faintly. And may I add, I was getting the worst gut feeling I've ever experienced. This really started to spook me and my mom. The breaking point was when a bottle that was in the then vacant room was thrown loud enough for me and my mom to hear across the house, roughly 30 feet away. By this point, the knocking was coming from every room in the house at the same time, very loudly. It felt like something out of an Exorcist movie, so we decided to pack up and get a hotel for the night. As I was bringing my duffel bag out to the living room, there was a very loud, obvious footsteps stomping behind me. It sounded like someone was walking right on my heels. However, the trippiest part about this whole experience was when I picked up my duffel bag and exclaimed, "Okay, we are leaving." Dead silence. The knocking stopped. The horrible feeling of dread went away, and we left and got a hotel. Someone right under this post commented, "I know the place you're talking about. Don't ever go back. I did and I regret it. I will not say anything else." Well, that chilled me to the bones. That was very spooky.
Ah, yes, indeed. That was a very frightful tale. Even I can't seem to get those thoughts out of my mind for the rest of the evening. And for those who are in the chat room, we want to say thank you for everybody who is coming here to witness this frightful evening. We have more tales yet to tell, and these next few tales will get very, very frightful because you will be seeing some evidence like you've never seen before, crystal clear evidence of the existence of UFOs, and even the tale of Bigfoot is legendary. Now remember this one thing as we any one of these stories could be in your own backyard, your own neck of the woods, and at any moment, any given day, no matter where you're at, anything like this can happen to you. You could see a UFO. You could have a strange paranormal encounter. You could hear the sound of Bigfoot wailing out in the distance. Which brings us to our next clue, which contains photographic evidence. This photograph comes straight from the witness, as he took a video of what he was seeing. And from the video, we were able to extract a couple of unique photographs, which I think you will find very interesting. The first photograph, and pay very close attention to this story, to this report, because this took place on August 11th, 2020, February 11th, 2026. At 7:09 p.m. Pacific time, lasted about 10 minutes. There was only one observer, the witness behind the wheel. Location was Wisconsin Rapid, Wisconsin, USA. Driving towards Wisconsin Rapids while out in the country with vehicles passing by, says the witness. The shape of the object, he said, looked like an orb. However, the video is revealed different. The object was coming from the west. Angle of elevation 45. Multiple lights in the sky, in line, and also in different locations in the sky. While driving, a single orb of light slowly flashed in the sky. Thought it might have been a shooting star, but then more started showing up, and with cars passing by, and the orb still showing up. Had a feeling that light pollution wasn't a factor for any celestial reasoning. The witness captured a video for just a few seconds. And this next photo, the photo you're seeing now, represents the object in the sky, as you can see in the right hand corner. But prepare yourself for this next photo, as I went piece by piece, frame by frame with the video. And this is what we captured. Now, I've investigated numerous UFO sightings in the past, and that to me definitely looks like lights from a spacecraft. Now, I've seen firsthand witness photographs, and so has Madam Mina, of evidence just like this. Now, folks, there is no guarantees that this is indeed a UFO, but upon looking over the photos, this was not photoshopped, it was not edited or anything. The video is legitimate raw video, and this photo was captured by going frame by frame from the video. And if anybody in the chat room or anybody watching around the world is near any of these locations tonight, please tell us in the chat room that we are telling stories in your hometown. Let us know. And if you want us to research sightings in your hometown, tell us that as well. Send us an email to rascal.one@icloud.com and let me know. I'll be more than happy, or put it in the chat room. I'll be more than happy to let you know about stories in your hometown on a future episode. But before we end here tonight, we have a few more stories for you. One more from Dr. Fright, and another one probably from Madam Mina, as her stories are so frightful. This next sighting occurred on February 12th, 2026. At 8:24 Pacific time, lasted 5 or so minutes. There were two observers, both in the military. Raleigh, North Carolina, USA. Location details 35.4757 north and 78.37.6 west, facing 290 degrees true north, or 290 degrees true, about 30 degrees above horizon. Color was amber, estimated size unknown. The witness says the shape was other. Viewed from land. Direction from viewer, roughly bearing 290 degrees, true. Angle of elevation 30. Closest distance, unknown. Perfectly vertical amber silver object hanging in the sky. And as the witness states, and I quote, while walking the dogs tonight with my wife, I stared into the sky in front of us and tried to figure out what was happening in the sky above the trees. I saw a perfectly vertical amber light or rod. The light was not brilliant, which explains why I thought it was a panel visible from the reflected light from below. It stayed completely stationary, and I watched it from that position for well over 5 minutes. There is a radio tower nearby, and I initially thought we were seeing an antenna panel from it, but I realized the tower was off to the right and plainly visible. I've seen a variety of things in the skies in my life, and was a trained aircraft spotter in the Navy. This defied all explanations. There was no recent rocket launches, No Starlink released today or tonight. No ISS. It was not an ice crystals or a sundog, as the sunset was an hour prior and it was 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Witness says it was not a plane. It was not a drone. It didn't even look like the UFOs I have seen. So apparently the witness has seen other UFOs. Witness states this was a perfectly vertical amber line in the sky. The streak was rough, the length of my thumb, with held at arm's length. Ah, I would love to interview the witness sometime and hear his other UFO encounters, as he appears to have had more, which isn't uncommon for those who are in the military or who happen to be aircraft pilots and have flown planes before. They tend to have other encounters over the years, sometimes multiple encounters. Sometimes the encounters can be so intense that they are told never discuss it again, or they'll lose their pilot license. And now let's send it back to Madam Mina to see if she has one more frightful tale for us. And it looks like Madam Mina had to step down for a moment. That is fine, as we are drawing near to the end of our show tonight. We have one more fascinating tale for you. And the story you just heard a moment ago, this is what the witness claimed to have seen in the sky. This particular photo here shows what the witness claims to have witnessed, and you can see the glowing light in the sky. And we have a person in the chat room saying that I'm in New Zealand and get all sorts of sightings. Yes, Stone Hobbit, please send me an email at rascal.1@icloud.com. I would love to hear some of your fascinating stories and maybe even read one of them on the Fright Files on an upcoming episode. And if anybody in the chat room has an interesting story, submit it to my email address. Me and Madamina would love to read it on the Fright Files on an upcoming episode. And now it is time to move on to our next fascinating tale. This next tale that you're about to hear is a legendary encounter of Bigfoot. It was the summer of 2008, July 25th, California. Tuolumne County, if I'm pronouncing that right. The location details Big Feather Meadows, a private preserve and association at Grandma's request. We wish to keep the actual numbers to ourselves. No problem. We respect confidentiality here on this show. Witness says, however, I am happy to take you there if you want. Scratch that. My brother's husband can take you there. Nearest town, Darrington, California. Nearest road, Forest Road, 6 North, or 6NOB, Highway 4. Observed. Okay, I just spent about 10 or 15 minutes listening to the various sounds and recordings that you have tried to help me identify. What we heard, I cannot say that any of the recordings sound just like what we heard. However, it sounded similar to many of them. My family, husband, and 2 kids went to Big Brothers Meadows, straight up from Darrington, California. My husband's grandpa has a small cabin in the meadows, and we go there when we can, generally in the summer. I made the mistake of reading a bunch of your stuff prior to the trip, and I admit that I was on a higher alert. That first night, around 2:30 or so in the morning, February 25th, 2008, just 3 days ago at the time he wrote this, at the time the witness wrote this, he states to me, I heard some kind of vocalization that was not familiar to me. I was not happy to hear this. Honestly, I suppose I ought to be since I have held on avid interest in this subject for many years. But there is a whacking big difference between sitting safely in your home and reading about this stuff on the net and listening to something that makes funky noises in the dark woods of a forest. As my best friend said, I used to really like the cabin. I go out there to the tent, wake up my husband, who was sleeping on the grounds by the unusual fire pit. We both sat and listened to the sounds for about an hour and a half or so. To the best of my abilities, this is what we heard, loud and clear, no shrill sounding to me. Poly-up calls sound somewhat metallic and shrill, medium range and smooth sounds. They begin lower in pitch and would rise smoothly to end at a higher pitch, but not like the whoops that you have recorded. These didn't have that lit, and at the end it was just a smooth accent from low range up to a higher range. There was another call that sounded like what a contraction that sounds like what a contraction looks like. Forgive me, I'm sure I'm not sure how to describe it, but it made me think of what my contractions look like on paper when birthing my kids, beginning low, smoothly rising up to the higher level, and then smoothly descending down again. There was also a kind of a hiccup sort of sound that would directly follow some of the calls, but I was literally shaking and too freaked out. Literally shaking and way too freaked out about it to really pay attention to what kind of call it followed. The upswing of the contraction call, ahoy, anyhow, as I said, this went on for over an hour with 2 of us listening. Now, sometimes it would sound like it was moving near us, other times it sounded further away. I am not sure if there were 2 animals, this occurring for the near or far sounds. This accounting for the near or far sounds, or one if it was 2 animals. They sounded identical to me after this happened. We both tried to explain how big and far the sounds were to us. We both agreed that it sounded somewhat distant, but find it hard to tell since sounds might carry really well in a dead silent forest. We agreed that it sounded to be between a half a mile and a mile away. We also agreed that it was a large sound, Whatever made it sound effortless as on its parts was a very large sound. We believe that it is a sound of size, similar to, say, a very loud moo of a cow across a field. Now I'm digging here because I've never had any experience like it, so I don't have much I can truly compare it to. You see, I grew up in Wisconsin State, West Side. I am a biology minor with a life science teaching credential, so I am familiar with at least what wildlife looks like and sounds like, if not in person, but most of my personal encounters with wildlife have been animals of the similar variety: coyotes, yipes, and the howls, things like that. I've only heard large animals on wildlife programs, and I am holding out that hope that one of your specialists will call me back and explain that what we heard was just a such and such, and often is confused with Bigfoot. I'd be able to enjoy the cabin a lot more if you could do this, but I know you won't be able to because was a very strange sound, and even my husband, who was grounded in science and wasn't afraid like I was, stated that it sure was loud and that it wasn't like anything he'd ever heard before. It sounded like an animal, but it also sounded enough like a person to think it could have been a joke, but also exactly, but not exactly. I do not think I could replicate the sound in any way. Absolutely zero sounds heard before. No wind, no crickets, no nothing. Just total silence. But I believe it is generally very quiet at night there. Also, we noticed a large pile of Scott behind the cabin and figured it was a bear. However, I've never seen bear poop in the wild and have no idea what it looks like. It was bigger than what a person would leave and know and had tons more roughage in it. It was very dark and brown and fibrous. No prints, though. My husband is rather adamant that it is bear poop, probably because, but I wanted to cover my bases here. So, other witnesses, as the witness states, I was reading a book sometime between and around the time of the sighting and couldn't sleep. I heard it first. I then proceeded to wake my husband up, who was sleeping soundly outdoors. He then sat up and listened with me for at least a half an hour before he fell back asleep. I couldn't I continued to listen until it stopped, and had it gotten any closer. I had planned on grabbing my kids and heading to the cabin upstairs and pulling to the ladder up with us. I'm betting I would have made it. My husband came could have come too. Now researching other stories related to this, only the ones I have read on your website, says the witness, that are nearby. The closest being the one at the lake in the area with the mother and son. I don't recall names or dates. And yes, there are other reports around this same time frame of Bigfoot sightings. Now, the time and conditions, this took place at 2:30 or perhaps slightly later, as my husband discovered his watch was slow the next day. Absolutely still, no wind, no sound. Very bright in the woods as the moon was nearly half full, and really lit the area well. No clouds or other weather to be noted. The environment, pine forest with meadows as well. Lots of mountains areas around us with steep ridges and hills. No real landmarks or structures noted other than the few cabins in the association that dot the area. To us it sounded as if it came from less than 1 mile at it is closest, and it was roughly south from our cabin site. Now folks, Northern California, Delamore at Northern California, Delorme Atlas, page 99 index in the middle of A and B, sections 6 and 7, states there were other encounters and shows areas and things around. But folks, this encounter that you heard really was quite an interesting encounter because the witness clearly heard the sounds of a real Bigfoot out in the distance. As the witness states, no other animal that she's known of could make such a sound, which makes this case even more prominent of being a true Bigfoot encounter. I want to thank the Stone Hobbit in the audience for saying he would love to submit a story to us, and Madamina would love to read a story from Stone Hobbit, and so would Dr. Fright. And this has been a most frightful evening, to say the least. A very frightful evening indeed. And we hope everybody has enjoyed tonight's stories, as they have been of the most frightful encounters. I want to say thank you to everybody in the chat room, everybody watching around the globe, and everybody, including Madamina, for her frightful tales. We have really enjoyed tonight's show here on the Fright Files. For those who want to learn more about Dr. Fright, you can research me on Google. Just type up Chris Harmon UFO, or you can research Chris Harmon Psychic, and you will find all kinds of videos, documentaries, movies, and different episodes that I've been on, as well as talk shows and podcasts. You can also learn more about me at SWPI Pekin, that is Something Wicked Paranormal Investigations. We are located as a team of paranormal investigators that travel across Illinois, investigating UFO sightings. We're located on YouTube as well as Facebook. That's SWPI Pekin. If you want to learn more about Madamina, you can follow her and Dr. Fright together here on the Fright Files, as we love to tell frightful tales of the unknown involving UFO, paranormal, and Bigfoot. From all of us here at the Fright Files, we want to thank you for a fascinating evening. And if you're hearing this, that means you survived until the end. And remember, any one of these stories you heard tonight could be in your own neighborhood or backyard, town or country or state. And at any given moment, remember, this could happen to you. Thank you for being a part of the Fright Files. Thank you for being a part of this frightful evening. Dr. Fright must leave and go join Madamina in the depths of the unknown.